Welcome to this Mizzou Conversation. I'm Reuben Stern. Today we're talking about the Mizzou Advantage. With me are 6 MU colleagues who have been highly involved in the Mizzou Advantage since its inception, and let me introduce them to you. On my left, first we have Carolyn Henry. She's a professor of oncology in the College of Veterinary Medicine and in the School of Medicine. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Next we have Cerry Klein. He is the LaPierre Professor of Industrial and Manufacturing Systems Engineering in the College of Engineering. Welcome, Cerry.
Thank you.
Next we have Jo Britt-Rankin. She is the Associate Dean and Associate Professor in Human Environmental Sciences and the MU Extension. Welcome, Jo Britt. To my right, first we have Carsten Strathausen. He is an Associate Professor of German and English. Welcome, Carsten.
Pleasure to be here.
Next we have LuAnne Roth. She's an Adjunct Assistant Professor in the English Department. Welcome, LuAnne.
Thank you.
And finally we have Charles Davis, Associate Professor of Journalism Studies in the School of Journalism. Welcome, Charles.
Welcome, Reuben.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about the Mizzou Advantage lately, and we might start off, Charles, why don't you just explain a little bit, what is the Mizzou Advantage?
Well, the Mizzou Advantage comes from a big idea, the idea of Provost Brian Foster, to kind of rewire the modern university. The Provost's idea is to try and move the university in a more collaborative, interdisciplinary direction by providing incentives and infrastructure around the Mizzou Advantage program to get faculty out of their silos. The idea that he had was that if we built these interdisciplinary networks of faculties by connecting disparate groups from very unpredictable pairings, journalism and engineering, medicine and English, that out of those pairings would come research possibilities that we weren't even dreaming of at the moment. And that's what Mizzou Advantage is all about, is trying to get the power of networks applied to academic problems.
I believe part of it as well is not only internal networks but external networks, because the eventual goal is that we build the internal networks, they reach out and develop external networks potentially with other universities or industries, which will help raise our stature and our recognition nationally and internationally, and also allow us then to compete for things that currently we can't compete for.
Mm-hmm. What did you expect, and how did this not meet those expectations?
I expected total cultural resistance.
Yeah.
There are people doing unbelievably important work on this campus who need to do it utterly alone, and I respect that. But many of us don't. And even people who do most of their work alone, I think secretly crave some collaborative work in at least one part of their portfolio. Many of them just need to get out and meet one another, and it's as simple as that.
I was one of those people working in my little bubble, which was very comforting, and all the problems and questions I asked could be answered within that bubble. And Mizzou Advantage and the idea of networking and finding people outside of your own discipline really appealed to me. And suddenly I found myself going across campus and finding other people doing food-related work, which was my background in the English department. And that process has been very exciting. Just to have the encouragement to do that has been very energizing, and who knows what will come out of it.
And it's exciting for those that were already positioned to be interdisciplinary in essence. I know in the College of Engineering, engineers are problem solvers, and they don't really care where the problem is, they just like to solve problems for the most part. And oftentimes in the past there had been walls built, and so they couldn't go solve problems they wanted to because people would say, oh no, you're not in my silo, or excuse me, golden cylinder of opportunity. So it has opened up a lot of doors for them. Not to say that they all necessarily want to do that, but the problems we have are such complex socioeconomic systems that there's no way one person's going to be able to deal with these problems. It's going to take teams. To me, that's the most exciting part about this overall, is we're addressing real problems that are not going to be solved if we continue in the old paradigm that we've had.
One thing that has really struck me in particular was when I sought advice about how to go about addressing faculty in the humanities who are traditionally, for example, not prone or not particularly known for collaborating. And I remember that the provost told me, just ask them what would they like to do. What do you want to do? And I've found that very a great sentiment. So I've actually used it. I said, like, well, you think about what problem it is that fascinates you, that interests you, bring it to us, and we'll try to make it work. We'll try to see if we can actually get a network of people together, if we can get sponsors to go and tackle this. It's not about trying to make people do something that they wouldn't want to do. It is about offering them an opportunity for doing the things they really want to do and haven't been able to in the past.
You know, I think we truly, our titles are facilitators, and we truly do facilitate. We're trying to find those faculty members that want to reach out across the campus and trying to put those faculty members together.
I think a lot of time also is spent on promoting this, just making people aware that the program exists. I went to departments, talked to faculty. We have a lot of forums where this is really specifically announced. What is it that we're doing, and how could this be beneficial to you in your career?
Right. And how are the 6 of you working together?
I think it's a blast. I think what was most surprising to me when I started in this program was that we come from very different fields, and at first glance you'd think they're not going to have a lot to do together. They're in separate areas: arts, humanities, science, and these aren't going to mix. And I think what I learned very quickly was, as we come to a meeting with an idea that, say, someone in a medical field has, somehow it's going to relate to media, it's going to relate to technology, it's certainly going to have some teaching components to it. I mean, all of these areas, I can't think of very many proposals I've looked at or groups working together that you can't find a way to create connections with the other areas on campus, and that's been very eye-opening for me.
All right. LuAnne, what's your experience been like?
That same thing. I was initially sort of overwhelmed at the idea of working with all, because my job is to coordinate educational opportunities in all these areas, which is pretty intimidating because I'm not familiar with the content area. But I quickly learned that there's so much synergy going on among the different areas that it's been exciting. And so I guess the challenge is there's so many great ideas bubbling up from these interactions. Just trying to figure out which ones to focus on first has been the most challenging thing.
In my world, we've got several projects that are really, I think, almost metaphysical in scale. Like how do we use the news media to promote civic literacy and democracy building? Those are big questions. And those are the sorts of questions that demand an interdisciplinary approach. When you think about a world in which, you know, journalism is entirely digital, well, then journalism needs engineering like engineering needs journalism. And so those interdisciplinary networks start forming not only because we are sort of strategically going after them, but because the broader world demands it.
I think that's an absolute crucial point. I think that we recognize that this is not something that comes from the top down as a project or a mere idea, but it is already happening on the ground, and we're there to facilitate, to encourage, and to remind people that this is actually a very, very positive development and that we should join in. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have really appreciated is, even in the early forums that the provost was having before we really rolled out the whole program, was the energy in these faculty forums. Everybody was very positive. People were throwing out ideas. Well, could we try this? Is this a new way to do things? And I think that energy has fed on itself as we've rolled the program out.
That's great. Are there other things that surprised you in terms of the way that this is rolling out, or the way that people are accepting this program?
I thought I would be doing a lot more immediately networking outside of the university, and the most surprising thing to me has been how much we have right here. You know, we used to have to find industry partners or other institutions to get certain things done, and now I'm realizing maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe it's been here all along, but we just didn't know that each other existed. So the beauty of a facilitator position is we actually have the time given to us to find those connections.
It is amazing among the 6 of us how many linkages we have across this campus. So if we are looking for a particular person, we probably know them among the 6 of us.
Well, that leads into another question that I wanted to get to. How have the 6 of you been collaborating as part of this project?
A lot of our agenda items have to do with how do we get groups together. We've got a proposal emerging in some part of the university. Who do we need to bring to that proposal to further strengthen it? So a lot of it is us talking to one another about who we know, where we know them. Some of it is about taking proposals and tweaking them, moving them, marrying proposals. We do a lot of matchmaking where you have a proposal coming out of one part of campus that sounds incredibly good, but would be twice as good if they just knew this proposal was coming out of this part of campus. So we arrange meetings between them. And so I think part of it is just building that list of contacts. And the other is getting to know one another's areas well enough that we can be intuitive.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's starting to think in ways that we haven't before in our own areas. I mean, I come from a science medicine area and frankly hadn't spent much time thinking about arts and humanities and how that might affect it. And with us meeting every week and talking about different linkages and the proposals that are being looked at, I think hearing that input kind of makes it now come to mind. It's now a natural thing for me, whereas initially I didn't automatically think of how we fit with other areas.
Mm-hmm. What's the dynamic like in your weekly meetings?
Very stern.
Somehow I don't believe it.
Yeah. It's work, work, work.
Yeah.
It's fun. I mean, we have a good time.
I mean, we do get things done.
Occasionally.
We talk about serious matters, but there is lots of joking, and I think that was one of the first important things we did, was to get to know each other better and learn to trust each other. It is not a competition between areas. I don't know that anyone ever thought it would be, but it quickly became apparent that it was a collaboration and friendships forming too.
Mm-hmm. Very, very important for me, because I come from an arts and humanities background and didn't know, frankly, many parts of campus. I mean, part of the job made me discover buildings on campus I've never seen before. I didn't even know where they were.
Never in my life did I think I would get to read a PhD dissertation from English, but I actually got to do that by being on this committee. So.
Now, is this something that you all volunteered to do, or were you kind of roped into it?
Yeah, I volunteered, and it was based on just looking around at everything we have available at this campus and realizing the potential and wanting to be a part of it.
I wrote Provost Foster and said, you know, there's so much energy, and this is something I want to be a part of. I think we can really build something bigger. You know, I believed in what his vision was for the program, so yeah.
I went to one of those initial meetings in a really foul mood. Within about 15 minutes, I think I was totally hooked. I don't know if I've ever had a more dramatic turnaround from bad attitude to kind of going, wow, this actually sounds pretty smart, to this is the smartest thing I've heard in forever. To me, it was just the conversation itself was that exciting.
I stepped into it pretty hesitantly because I wasn't sure I was, you know, the person for that. So, you know, tell me what to do, I'll gladly partake of it, but I wasn't so sure I wanted to be in charge of anything. And the nice thing about the facilitator, my title is technically coordinator, but I think of myself as being one of the facilitators too, and not so much having to develop new ideas, but eliciting those from the people working on the ground like me. So it's worked out.
Carrie, how did you get involved?
Well, I'd spent the last 3 years on leave at the National Science Foundation, and I'd been a chair of the department before I went there. And so I was coming back, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And Provost Foster explained it to me, and much like they've said, as soon as he explained it, I said, you know, that's been my passion all my life. I mean, I've been trying to get people to work across campus for years. And so I said, why wouldn't I want to do that? That sounds great.
I think that's true for all of us, that one way or another, we're believers in what this program tries to do, and that's what makes it so exciting. And it was really liberating. I remember that it was liberating to suddenly talk to somebody and say, yeah, this is an excellent idea, because it allows you to, it gives you the resources and the vision, the strategic vision, to implement some of the things that we have wanted to do for a long time. And that is great.
How has the response been with your colleagues back in your own individual departments?
In HES, it's been wonderful. Our dean actually invited all 6 of us to come speak at our faculty meeting in the fall. We had breakouts among the faculty, and it was really good for them, because they began then seeing how they could put in some of these proposals, how they could start to build their networks, and so it's been very supportive.
School of Journalism has been unreal. I think in large part because our industry is is imploding in real time, and so there is no comfort level in the School of Journalism these days anywhere. And I think everyone within the journalism school was looking outward at solutions and ways to do things differently and people to work with. And so the pickup from Mizzou Advantage has just been literally overwhelming, because when the proposals were being formulated, there were days when there were not enough hours in a 9-10 hour day to meet with all of the different people who wanted to meet to talk about proposals, literally. And I was so heartened by that, by the collaborative nature, just the kind of desire by our faculty to go out and work with other people, because I don't think it's always been there. And I think Mizzou Advantage has a lot to do with that.
We had a lot of cynicism in One Health, One Medicine, and I've seen that almost completely disappear as I have talked to folks. And I think initially those that were interested in it were probably interested more because it was an additional funding source that they could go after. But what's resulted from that process is that people are now working together and going to outside agencies for funding. They're developing new courses, and it's all this that has happened as a result of just being able to connect them with somebody and being in a position where you find collaborators because you just met with them 2 hours ago.
Right. How have you set up your work, and what has changed since the beginning of the program to now?
It's busy.
Yeah.
It is busy. You know, and I think in every area there has just been this overwhelming response. You know, I think we've all met in groups with faculty. And I think, you know, not only within our own college, I think other colleges, other departments have been very open and welcomed us in, you know, wanted to learn more.
Lots of meetings. I could manage my calendar with a paper calendar before. All of a sudden I was turning to electronic calendars and having to coordinate with all these other people. And a lot of the work I did was, grading papers, preparing for class, reading, writing. And now a lot of it is face-to-face, so it takes a lot of an extrovert's energy to do that. So it's been a big adjustment for me.
Don't you find that you're always kind of on? I mean, like, even when I'm not doing Mizzou Advantage stuff, I'm thinking Mizzou Advantage stuff, and I may be at a social event that has nothing to do with what we do, but still kind of making those connections.
But what happened also is I think that there's a shift in the topic of the conversation away from introducing the program as in general. I think for me that made it a little easier. Before you were pitching and explaining the program. Now I feel we're after the program has established itself a little bit, we're in a position to really let the faculty and the other collaborators talk and try to see how can we go and fit things. And that made it easier, I think.
And I think it was, several of us attended a meeting over the weekend or a function with a lot of alumni. And we spent a short period of time explaining the program. Now they're wanting to say, well, how can I get involved? This is what I do. How can I be more involved with my university?
I remember getting in my new office the first day and sitting there thinking, how am I going to fill this schedule, and how, I need to figure out who I'm going to meet with. And that lasted, what, a day? And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I ever really went out and sought people to talk to. It sort of all came our direction, and now that that's happened, it's kind of like the world's greatest pyramid scheme. I mean, you talk to this person and they talk to two people and they talk to two people, and it's getting easier in that regard. But I think the enthusiasm is adding to the amount of proposals that we're looking at and the number of groups that we're dealing with. But that's a good problem to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In terms of what you have taken away from this, I mean, what are some of the big things that you all have learned through this process? You've been at it a year now.
I think I have just become more and more fascinated with all of the work that's going on across this campus. We have a tremendous set of assets here on this campus, and every day it just amazes me when I go meet with folks.
Mm-hmm. I think it's been humbling for me intellectually. I think I still think my work is fairly interdisciplinary. I'm interested in visual culture, literature, philosophy, science. But I just noticed how little I actually do know about a lot of things that are going on, how interesting and fascinating a lot of the work is that colleagues are doing, how accomplished they are, frankly. So I felt like I learned sometimes a little bit on the subject matter, but just in general I learned to appreciate the depth and the breadth of what a university like this can offer. It's tremendous.
So true. Being able to go and interact with scientists has been for me, the most rewarding thing and humbling. And you just meet people who are so brilliant and so good at what they do, and they sort of toil in relative obscurity, many of these people. And that's another part of the Mizzou Advantage program, is to bring, not only to bring them out and get them working with one another, but to bring light on what they're doing.
Yeah, I think I've developed not only tremendous respect for what it takes to work with someone in another discipline, but also how much richness there is in all of the disciplines, regardless of how similar or different they are from my own.
I've been amazed at the breadth of knowledge of all these people as well, and the depth of that breadth. I mean, you want to talk about humbling. I mean, we are a liberal arts campus, so you would hope that we would take advantage of that, all the different things that are going on in campus that can broaden us as well.
But I think the Mizzou climate is unique in that I think faculty are being rewarded for that interaction, which doesn't happen in many campuses. And even I remember we got together and we were talking about how tenure and promotion decisions were made, and how writing a book would be really valued in one area and would be looked at as a distraction in another area. You need to be off writing grants and doing the science. And so I think realizing that we have come from a different reward system initially, and now we're finding our reward system by working together has been a real eye-opener for me.
What would you all say have been your greatest successes or accomplishments so far within the Mizzou Advantage program?
From my perspective, really the main success so far has been that the ratio of disbelievers and cynics versus believers has reversed. And that, I think, is a big success in and of itself.
Early on, we used to have this running joke that Mizzou Advantage was like building an airplane while flying it. Like, we had to get it going even before we were completely sure what that thing was that we were building. So I think we do have more clarity today, almost a year later, but we needed to make that, just move forward and start that process.
One of the big successes when you get a group together and they're literally introducing themselves to one another, and 10 minutes later somebody's up at the dry erase board at the head of the meeting and they're drawing like crazy, and you can almost see the synapses sort of firing across the room, and like you kind of go, whoa, I helped do that. And that's a really good feeling.
You know, I think there's been some opportunities for us as well. Before last year, LuAnne and I may have never written a grant together, but now I think there's even these opportunities that are coming up that I think it's going to then benefit, it may be us, but it's probably going to benefit many faculty when we're done.
Yeah, and students. One of the things that I've been working on is well, how to benefit students from these experiences. And students major in one major, and sometimes they double or triple major, but they often don't work with students from other majors on projects. And so I'm trying to form these small learning communities that are, by their very nature, interdisciplinary, and the faculty mentoring these small groups are also from different disciplines, and seeing what comes out of that. And this is our first semester, so we're yet to see, but the ability to help make some of those matches and then just step aside and see what comes out of it is special, magical.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my area of One Health, One Medicine, just getting the understanding of what that phrase means has been a big part of it. And you know, we've had a vet school on the same campus as a medical school for many, many years, but a lot of those groups didn't know the other one was working in the same area. Now, the success to me is that people are naturally thinking that way when they weren't before, and it's nice to see that evolve. And I think we've got momentum. I think the greatest thing about Mizzou Advantage is that we've combined vision with momentum. I think it's one thing to have a vision of what you want to see happen. I think it's a very different one to have the momentum to actually get there, and I really feel like we have that momentum.
The economic development authorities of the state now know of Mizzou Advantage and want to work with us because of the outreach. And who knows where that stuff goes? I mean, you just don't know until you cast a line. But I can't help but think that there are fruitful collaborations there.
And I think as much as we focused on faculty and external partners, I'm now seeing students coming and wanting to become involved. We've had others that want us to become involved in some of the student projects that we have here on campus, so they want them to be designated as Mizzou Advantage projects. So that's exciting to see the students wanting to become more involved.
Well, and one of the stated goals of Mizzou Advantage was to be able to recruit the top people in the country to come here as faculty and as students. And when I interview people now for positions, it's like they can't get me to shut up about Mizzou Advantage. And, you know, I'm like, well, we're doing this and this, and we're connected here and here. And it's just, it's infectious. I mean, and you have people then leave the interviews and go, wow, they got something really going on in Missouri. And we're probably a little bit annoying because there's people there that are talking about, you know, their university's cutting back on this or that, and they're not building programs, and we're just all, well, we're doing this and this and that, and it's, I think it's a very smart move. I think it was a risky move in this environment, but I think it's going to pay off because we're really learning how to train for those future jobs.
Yeah, I remember hearing the provost at one of those early meetings, one of those exploratory meetings, say, look, we'd better do something strategically to grow this university. And that was a brilliant point. I think that was one of the points where I really began to kind of pay attention, because if you go around the country right now with the economic malaise, I don't hear any other universities talking about interdisciplinary collaborative research networks. And when I tell people, my colleagues at other schools, what we're doing, they're amazed, frankly.
I talked to a guy in Denver from Sandia National Labs, and he said that is a fantastic model. That's the future. I'm glad one university in the country is finally starting to do it right. That was his quote to me, and that's what you like to hear.
You're not going to find this anywhere else. You know, the Provost Foster really had a vision that is really unique.
Well, that's the thing. We're supposed to be preparing students for this rapidly changing world, and we do a good job already of giving them good content in their disciplines, but we need to be thinking more about how to teach them to think critically and be innovative, because by the time they graduate, the content they've learned is almost irrelevant in some cases because things are changing so quickly. So we need to train them to be innovators so that when they graduate they can hit the ground running, and also be in a mindset where they know how to work with other people from other disciplines on big problems, because that's how things get solved in the real world.
At the same time, you got faculty members on a university campus modeling entrepreneurialism to undergraduate and graduate students. Think about how powerful that is. I mean,
and being rewarded for it.
Yeah.
I think also what MU Advantage affords is also a critical perspective on some of that. It's by no means just saying, let's jump on the train and just go with the corporate vision. It's also saying, let's examine what those connections do. We have several proposals that actually go into depth of how does the archaeology of networks work, how is knowledge produced. We are being asked to evaluate the program on a running scale, develop metrics for saying, does this work, what didn't work. I like that a lot too. There is the research and the self-criticism built into this program as well.
Yeah, Carsten, I think, exactly right on that. One of the things dealing especially with science professors who enjoy the basic sciences, when they first heard of Mizzou Advantage, they thought they were going to have to abandon basic science and jump on board and do something. But I think they've now realized that you can't solve these problems without the basic science. It's getting at the borders to where we take that basic science and make it a reality.
In sciences, I mean, you had your government grants that you went after, your NIH grants that you went after, and some of the other sources, corporate was sort of tainted, and that's not the money you went after. And I don't think that's realistic. And we're seeing that not only in terms of the research that we're doing, but the training. I mean, we're actually now starting to talk to industry leaders and say, help us develop a training program that's going to make an end product that you feel good about hiring. So we're bringing them in on the front end of it and thinking differently than other universities are, and I think that's really going to set us apart.
Are there things that you all hoped the program might accomplish by now that hasn't come to fruition quite yet?
Yeah, I was going to have created a bunch of certificate programs at this point, and but it quickly became apparent it's much more complicated than that, and rather than throwing together something very quickly, we needed to chew on ideas for a while. And so we're not there yet, but when we are there, it'll be a lot more sophisticated and better opportunities for students for the real world than anything I could have come up with on my own.
I think that's a very difficult question in that, at least for me, when I talked to Provost Foster about the initial job, one of the reasons that it attracted me was that his metrics were very long term. He was looking 10 to 15 years down the road. So at the end of a year, I guess I'm not thinking in terms of what we haven't accomplished, because I'm still thinking we have a few more years yet to go forward to accomplish the things that I believe he had as part of his vision. So.
Basically, it is such a all-comprehensive approach. It is not targeted towards something specific. Some people have said that, and I don't think it's simply not true that somebody is left categorically out of this initiative. It's not true. And so when you have that, though, when you have such a broad enterprise, then simply the timeline gets slowed down. And so somehow for me, I would have said, yeah, I was thinking that things would happen more quickly, but I am very happy at where we are right now, given that it really is a long-term and comprehensive idea.
One final question that we can talk about here is, where do you all see this heading now? So it's a year into the project. We talked a little bit about the Provost's long sort of time frame. What's next? Where's this going in the next couple of years and beyond?
Well, I think we're really going to start establishing the networks in the form that the Provost discussed with us, where we've now taken the time to build internal ones. We'll continue to do that. We're now going to start looking for key pieces to those networks that are missing that could cause them to grow even further. And so that would potentially be hires of important people or ones that fit that. A classic example, I think, of how the program's working and where this may be going is there's an endowed professor on campus who has already put together an internal and external network of 23 universities, 14 companies, and he's going after this $45 million grant. And he has, in essence, put together what I think eventually we want to get everybody to start putting together. So, and then hopefully we can get other groups to move in that direction as well.
We've scratched the surface, but we've got a lot of work to do, reaching out to the state and the country and the world. We have alumni concentrated in 10, 12 urban corridors in America pretty significantly. We need to be working with them. We have not asked them how they could work with us. And that's a really powerful question. Alumni want to help and they want to get involved. And many of these people are now at points in their career where they are very well placed to help us. And so I think in the future, both near and far, you'll see a lot more sort of strategic attempts to tap existing people that can help us.
Well, I think we spent the first year kind of building the product that would be easy to sell, and now it's the easy sell. I mean, we can go out to those folks in industry and at other institutions and say, this is what we've got to offer, and it looks attractive, and it is attractive. I mean, that's the nice part is we can see end products. We can work towards goals instead of saying, I'm going to be in my lab working on this receptor for 25 years. You can say, I've discovered this receptor. There's somebody over at the research reactor that can target that for therapy. And I could use it in a dog model, and then I can use it in the human hospital, and then we can get a patent. And I mean, it's everything happening right here, and it's so much more fun when you see the end product.
And speaking of the end product, that's the end of our conversation here. Thank you very much for joining us for this Mizzou conversation, and thanks to all of our panelists who have been involved in Mizzou Advantage for joining us today as well.